Cobb County police are trying to find out who killed a 22-year-old Austell woman and set her car on fire.
The family of Katera Couch is just devastated tonight.
They hurt my baby so bad. My baby didn't deserve this. My baby was a good baby.
In the surrounding area, in the wood line, authorities noticed a deceased body.
Subsequently found a vehicle that was on fire.
They tracked down the owner of the car.
We spoke to the owner. It ended up being the adoptive mother of our victim, and she said that she hadn't spoken to her daughter in over a day. I ended up finding the...
What could turn love into betrayal? How does a promising life full of joy end in silence and ashes? These questions haunt the tragic death of 22-year-old Katera Couch, whose vibrant life was cut short in unimaginable ways. A star on roller skates, she won over 150,000 Instagram followers and 104,000 on TikTok with her charm and upbeat spirit. But just recently, her burned-out car was found on a quiet piece of land in Austell, Georgia. Hours later, her brutally stabbed body was discovered nearby, sparking sorrow and leaving many unanswered questions. How did this come to pass? Who could have done this? What secrets lay hidden behind her online smiles and popularity? Stick with us as we unravel the shocking and tragic story of Katera Couch, a story woven with love, trust and betrayal. In this video, we'll track Beauty's last hours, dig into the evidence that led police to a suspect, and listen to her family's desperate calls for justice. But there's more here than meets the eye. Who was really behind this crime? What drove them to such an act? And how did investigators connect the dots so quickly? Keep watching as we dive into the details of this heartbreaking mystery. Welcome to Fatal Fame, where all our stories are based on true crimes. Please support us by subscribing to this channel and clicking the notification bell icon so you don't miss any of our latest stories. Katera Couch was not merely a name echoing through the corridors of social media. She was a beacon of inspiration, a young woman whose vibrant spirit and boundless energy transcended the screen to touch lives across the globe. Born and raised in the peaceful town of Austell, Georgia, Beauty, whose real name was Katera Couch, rose from local fame to international acclaim through her mastery of roller skating, an activity she transformed into a captivating art form. From her early days, Isabella's flair for skating was undeniable. She was naturally gifted, and by her mid-teens, she had already claimed numerous titles at local and regional competitions. But it was her transition to social media that catapulted her into the spotlight. Known to her followers as Katera Couch, she quickly amassed a substantial online following, with over 162,000 followers on Instagram and 120,000 on TikTok. Her posts were a mix of dazzling athletic performances and heartfelt engagements with her audience, making her a beloved figure both on and off the rink. Each video she shared was more than just a display of skill. It was an invitation into her world. Beauty had a knack for making her followers feel seen and heard. She responded to comments, shared insights into her life, and always encouraged her fans to pursue their passions with as much zeal as she did. This genuine interaction created a strong bond with her audience, who saw her not just as an influencer, but as a friend and mentor. Despite her rising fame, Beauty remained deeply connected to her roots in Austell. She was actively involved in her community, using her platform to support local causes and inspire the next generation of skaters. Her commitment to making a positive impact was evident in every aspect of her life, from organizing free skating lessons for children to participating in community improvement initiatives. Yet, the pressures of public life were ever present. Behind the glamorous posts and sparkling smiles were the challenges of maintaining a public persona that could sometimes feel overwhelming. Beauty navigated these pressures with grace, managing the high expectations and constant scrutiny with an unwavering positivity that endeared her even more to her audience. The circumstances surrounding her untimely death were as shocking as they were tragic. When news broke that Beauty's body had been found near her burned-out car in a secluded area, it sent ripples of grief and disbelief across her community and beyond. The stark contrast between her vibrant life and the grim details of her death left everyone looking for answers. How could such a promising young life be cut so short? What happened in those final hours? These questions loomed large in the minds of all who knew her. The day that forever altered the fabric of Austell, Georgia, began like any other, with the promise of an ordinary Thursday unfolding under the expansive southern sky. But as the hours ticked by, an undercurrent of tragedy was silently coursing its way towards a catastrophic event that would leave the community irrevocably shattered. August 23rd was marked in Beauty's calendar as a day of preparation and celebration. She was scheduled to host a major community roller skating event that weekend, aimed at fundraising for local youth programs. Her morning was packed. Meetings with sponsors, a quick training session on the rink, and final touches on her event promotion posts. Beauty was last seen by her family at breakfast, her demeanor upbeat and focused, her mind racing through the day's checklist. She left home in her cherished car, a modest, late-model sedan, not flashy but maintained with care. Waving goodbye, her mother recalling her last words, a cheerful promise to make it a day to remember. As the afternoon wore on, Beauty attended her meetings, her presence injecting energy and enthusiasm into every interaction. Eyewitnesses at the rink described her as in high spirits, practicing her routines flawlessly, her laughter echoing off the walls. After her practice, she posted a quick update on social media, a snapshot of her skates with the caption, "Ready to roll the weekend in, can't wait to see everyone there." It was her final post, time-stamped at 2:40, but as dusk approached, an unsettling silence took hold. Calls to her cell phone went unanswered, and by nightfall, her family's worry had morphed into deep concern. By late evening, with no word from Beauty, her parents contacted the local police to report her missing. Meanwhile, a few miles from the heart of Austell, in a secluded area known more for its scenic beauty than for human activity, a grim scene was unfolding. At approximately 8:30 p.m., a passing motorist noticed a glow emanating from a small clearing off the main road. Approaching cautiously, the witness was horrified to discover Beauty's car engulfed in flames. The fire department was immediately alerted, and units arrived swiftly, their sirens slicing through the quiet night, a stark harbinger of the grim discovery that awaited them. Firefighters worked diligently to extinguish the blaze, which had reduced the vehicle to a charred skeleton. Amidst the confusion and the settling smoke, a more harrowing discovery was made. Just a few yards from the wreckage, obscured by the dense foliage, lay Beauty's body. The stark, chilling contrast between the fire's destructive energy and the serene, untouched natural surroundings painted a surreal picture. Emergency responders were deeply shaken as they secured the scene. The police began cordoning off the area, their faces set in grim lines, the weight of the unfolding tragedy evident in their somber expressions. The lead detective on scene described the mood as one of profound sorrow, tinged with a growing urgency to uncover the truth behind this horrific act. As word of the discovery spread, the community's heartache was palpable. Friends, family, and fans gathered, holding each other, their sobs breaking the night's stillness. The immediate response by emergency services was commendable, yet no amount of professionalism could shield them from the emotional impact of such a devastating loss. As the community grappled with the sudden loss of Beauty Couch, the initial shock quickly transformed into a desperate need for answers. The streets of Austell, usually quiet and uneventful, were suddenly thrust into a state of mourning and confusion. Friends, family members, and fans gathered, creating impromptu memorials filled with flowers, candles, and photographs of Beauty in her element on roller skates. Their tear-streaked faces reflected a collective disbelief, and conversations were laden with memories of Beauty's warmth and the void her passing had left behind. Her family was devastated but determined, pressing for answers in the midst of their grief. They became vocal advocates for the investigation, urging anyone with any information to come forward and assist the police. Her mother, in particular, was a figure of poignant sorrow and resilience, giving emotional interviews that appealed to the public's sense of justice. She brought so much light into this world. Her mother stated during a vigil, "We need to know why it was snuffed out so cruelly." At the crime scene, law enforcement faced a complex puzzle. The location where Beauty's car was found, a secluded wooded area on the outskirts of town, suggested that whoever was responsible wanted to avoid detection. The state of her car, burned almost beyond recognition, hinted at an attempt to destroy evidence. Nearby, Beauty's body was discovered in a condition that spoke of violence and haste. The juxtaposition of the charred metal of her car against the natural backdrop where she was found created a somber and surreal scene, one that investigators approached with a mix of professional detachment and underlying urgency. Police began their investigation with a thorough sweep of the crime scene. Forensic teams combed through every inch, collecting potential evidence such as tire tracks, footprints, and any remnants that the fire hadn't consumed. The meticulous examination extended to Beauty's body, where the nature of her injuries could possibly hint at the motives and methods of her assailant. Every scrap of evidence was catalogued and sent for analysis, with the hope that even the smallest detail might lead to a breakthrough. Interviews with witnesses and those who knew Beauty well formed the next phase of the investigation. Detectives reached out to friends, acquaintances, and fellow influencers, piecing together Beauty's last known movements. Social media, a platform where Beauty had shared much of her life, became a crucial investigative tool. Officers sifted through her posts, comments, and direct messages, looking for any anomalies or signs of conflict that might shed light on her tragic end. The police also extended their inquiry to local businesses and residents near the crime scene, checking for any surveillance footage that might have captured suspicious activity. The local community, still reeling from the shock, cooperated fully, driven by the hope that justice would be served for a life taken too soon. As each day passed, the urgency of the investigation grew, fueled by the emotional weight of the community's grief and the echoing silence where Beauty's vibrant presence had once been. The investigation into the day's events began in earnest, with detectives piecing together Beauty's last known movements, gathering forensic evidence from the scorched earth, and interviewing anyone who might have seen something unusual. As the night drew on, the collective grief of Austell deepened, the community bound together by their shared mourning and the haunting question that echoed through the town. How could such a vibrant life be extinguished in such sudden, brutal fashion? The quest for answers had just begun, but already it was clear that the town of Austell, and all those touched by Beauty's spirit, would never be the same. The initial clues and evidence collected were just the beginning of what promised to be a deeply complex and emotionally charged case, as investigators delved deeper into the mystery of who could have committed such a heinous act and why. As the pieces slowly began to fit together, the picture that emerged was one of intrigue, deep-seated motives, and a story that was as heartbreaking as it was mysterious. The local police, led by Detective John Marley, a veteran with over 2 decades of experience, intensified their efforts to unravel the mystery surrounding the incident. The area around the crime scene remained cordoned off, a constant reminder of the tragedy that had occurred. Detective Marley and his team were methodical in their approach, following every lead with precision. The charred remains of Beauty's car were meticulously examined for any signs of tampering or evidence of an accelerant, suggesting arson. Forensic technicians scoured the area, collecting fibers, tire marks and footprints, while others took samples from the burned vehicle to test for trace elements that might suggest foul play. Meanwhile, the personal aspects of the investigation began to unfold. The police started to delve into Beauty's relationships, looking for anyone who might have had a motive to harm her. Interviews were conducted with friends, acquaintances, and business partners. As Beauty was a prominent figure in both the local and online communities, the list of potential suspects and witnesses was extensive. Key figures in Beauty's life began to draw particular attention from the investigators. Among them was her former business partner, with whom she had recently had a financial disagreement that was not widely known. There was also a recent ex-boyfriend whose relationship with Beauty had ended on unclear terms. Each person interviewed provided another piece of the complex puzzle of Beauty's personal and professional life, revealing layers of relationships that were marked by both affection and tension. As the investigation deepened, Beauty's family became vocal advocates for justice. They organized vigils and public meetings, not only to mourn Beauty, but to keep her case in the public eye. Her mother, often accompanied by Beauty's siblings, made heartfelt pleas for anyone with information to come forward. "Someone out there knows what happened to my daughter," her mother stated during a candlelight vigil, her voice steady but thick with emotion. "Please, we are begging you to come forward. Help us find justice for Beauty." The community responded with a wave of support. Locals who had followed Beauty's career and had been touched by her community initiatives came out in large numbers. Social media platforms, once the stage for Beauty's vibrant presentations, now served as rallying points for justice. Hashtags like "Justice for Beauty" and "Remembering Beauty Couch" spread rapidly, amplifying the call for clues that could lead to the perpetrator. Local businesses offered rewards for information, leading to the arrest and conviction of those responsible for Beauty's death, further evidence of the community's deep investment in the case. Police tip lines buzzed with potential sightings and information, each claim meticulously logged and followed up by Detective Marley's team. Through it all, the depth of the community's grief was matched only by their resolve to uncover the truth. Each interview, each piece of evidence collected, each public plea added layers to the ongoing narrative of Beauty's life and tragic demise. The investigation, sprawling and complex, slowly began to paint a picture of a life that was interwoven with the fabric of ale far more deeply than anyone had known. As leads were pursued and evidence analyzed, the anticipation of a breakthrough grew, with the community and family holding on to hope that justice for Beauty was within reach. The days stretched into weeks, and the investigation into Beauty Couch's death continued with relentless intensity. Every clue, no matter how small, was scrutinized, every lead pursued with determination. The community, still mourning, remained vigilant, watching the case unfold with a mixture of grief and impatience. They needed answers. They needed justice. Then a breakthrough came. Forensic analysis of Beauty's burned-out vehicle revealed a crucial piece of evidence, traces of an accelerant commonly used in arson cases. But it wasn't just the presence of fire accelerant that pointed to foul play. Investigators discovered a single, intact fingerprint on the passenger side door. Given the state of the vehicle, it was a miracle that the print had survived the heat and destruction. The discovery reignited hope within the department, and within hours, the print was run through national databases. A match was found. The print belonged to Eugene Louis Jacques, a 21-year-old man from Atlanta who had a previous run-in with the law. Though nothing that suggested the capacity for murder, he had a record for minor offenses, trespassing, petty theft, but nothing violent. What investigators found far more disturbing, however, was his connection to Beauty. Jacques wasn't just an acquaintance, he was her boyfriend. Those closest to Beauty had mentioned him in passing during interviews, but their accounts of him were vague. Some described their relationship as affectionate, while others suggested there had been tension in recent weeks. Beauty had not publicly shared much about their relationship, keeping that part of her life relatively private. But as detectives looked deeper, they uncovered messages and call logs that told a different story. Just days before her death, Beauty and Jacques had engaged in a heated exchange over text. According to sources close to Beauty, she had been planning to end the relationship. She had confided in a friend that Jacques was becoming possessive, unpredictable, and increasingly jealous of her growing fame. He didn't like how much attention she got from other guys online, one friend revealed. She said she felt like she was always having to explain herself, always having to reassure him. Investigators now had a suspect, but finding him would be another challenge entirely. Jacques had vanished in the days following Beauty's murder. His phone had gone dark, his social media accounts inactive. Surveillance footage from a gas station near the crime scene showed him purchasing a red gas canister the night Beauty disappeared. The timestamp placed him in the area just hours before her car was found in flames. With this new evidence in hand, authorities issued a warrant for his arrest and a statewide manhunt began. It wasn't long before law enforcement tracked his movements. After Beauty's death, Jacques had fled Georgia, heading west. He was eventually located in Louisiana, over 500 miles away, where he had been laying low at a relative's house. U.S. Marshals, working alongside local authorities, executed a high-risk arrest at a motel where Jacques had checked in under a false name. The arrest was swift. Officers stormed the room, finding him alone, his bags packed, seemingly preparing to disappear completely. He was taken into custody without resistance, though sources later revealed he had been in possession of a one-way bus ticket to Texas, suggesting he was planning to run even farther. When asked about Beauty's death during initial questioning, Jacques refused to speak. He maintained a blank expression, his demeanor cold and distant. No comment was all he offered, despite the overwhelming evidence against him. After processing, Jacques was extradited back to Georgia, where he was officially charged with first-degree murder, arson, and aggravated assault. The prosecution wasted no time in emphasizing the deliberate nature of the crime, painting it as a crime of passion turned deadly. News of Jacques' arrest spread like wildfire. For Beauty's family, there was a bitter sense of relief. The man responsible for their daughter's death was finally behind bars, but it did little to mend the permanent void left behind. At a press conference, Beauty's mother, Katera Couch, stood before cameras, her voice unwavering despite the pain evident in her eyes. "My baby didn't deserve this. She had her whole life ahead of her. And for what? Because someone couldn't handle the fact that she wanted to move on." The community, which had rallied behind the Couch family since Beauty's death, responded with a mixture of sorrow and anger. Candlelight vigils turned into gatherings for justice, where residents and fans alike demanded the harshest possible punishment for Jacques. The roller skating community, which Beauty had been such a shining light in, held a memorial skate in her honor. Hundreds showed up, gliding across the rink in tribute to the young woman who had inspired them. Online, Beauty's fan base continued to keep her memory alive, sharing old videos of her smiling, gliding effortlessly across the floor, reminding the world of the joy she had brought. Hashtags like Justice for Beauty and Remember Beauty Couch flooded social media, ensuring that her story wouldn't be forgotten. As Jacques awaited trial, a collective sense of determination settled over the community. This wasn't just about punishment, it was about justice. For Beauty, for her family, and for every young woman who had ever felt trapped in a situation where their safety had been compromised. The case was far from over, but one thing was certain. Beauty Couch's story would not end in silence. As the sun rose over Georgia on the morning of Eugene Louis Jacques' first court appearance, the weight of Beauty Couch's murder hung heavy in the air. Outside the Cobb County Courthouse, A growing crowd gathered, holding signs that bore Beauty's name and messages of justice. Her family, supporters, and members of the roller skating community stood shoulder to shoulder, their presence a testament to the young woman who had touched so many lives. Inside, the prosecution was prepared. The state was pursuing first-degree murder, arson, and aggravated assault charges. A case built on an overwhelming body of evidence. The goal was clear: to ensure Jacques faced the full consequences of his actions. The trial commenced with opening statements. Prosecutor Angela Cartwright, a seasoned attorney with a reputation for fiercely advocating for victims, painted a picture of a premeditated and brutal crime. This was not an accident. This was not a moment of passion that spiraled out of control. This was a cold, calculated act by a man who refused to let Beauty Couch live without him. She walked the jury through the timeline of events, from the moment Beauty was last seen alive to the discovery of her charred car and lifeless body. Every detail was meticulously laid out, setting the stage for the parade of witnesses and expert testimonies that would follow. On the other side, the defense team, led by public defender Mark Wheeler, attempted to sow doubt. Their strategy was simple: argue that Jack wasn't the only person with access to Beauty that night. They hinted at the possibility of an unknown assailant, a vague and faceless alternative to the man sitting in front of the jury. But the evidence was damning. Prosecutors wasted no time presenting the mountain of forensic evidence that placed Jacques at the scene of the crime. Surveillance footage from a gas station, time-stamped just hours before Beauty's murder, showed Jacques purchasing a gas canister, the same kind used to torch her vehicle. Cell phone records indicated that Jacques' phone had pinged near the crime scene in the critical hours leading up to and immediately following Beauty's death. DNA evidence was found inside Beauty's car. A single strand of Jacques' hair discovered on the passenger seat, proving that he had been in the vehicle that night. Burn marks on Jacques' arms and hands, consistent with someone who had set a fire up close and lost control of the flames, were presented by medical experts. But it was the autopsy report that silenced the courtroom. The coroner, a seasoned forensic pathologist, described in graphic detail the brutal nature of Beauty's final moments. She had not died from the fire. She had been stabbed multiple times, with defensive wounds on her hands, indicating she had fought desperately for her life before succumbing to her injuries. At the mention of this, Beauty's mother clutched a tissue in her hand. Her face unreadable yet visibly shaken, tears welled in the eyes of her father. His hands clenched tightly together as he listened to the details no parent should ever have to hear. Beauty's best friend, the last person to have spoken to her before her death, testified that Beauty had expressed fear in the days leading up to her murder. She told me she was ending things with him, that he was jealous, controlling. She wasn't herself around him. She wanted out. Another friend recounted how Beauty had blocked Jacques' number just days before her murder, telling them, "He won't leave me alone." Then came the gas station attendant, the man who sold Jacques the gas canister. He identified Jacques as the customer who had paid in cash, acting fidgety and nervous. The jury listened intently as each witness corroborated the prosecution's theory. Beauty had tried to walk away, and Jacques had refused to let her go. The defense, however, struggled to provide an alternate narrative. They attempted to suggest that the gas canister purchase was a coincidence, that Jacques had left town out of fear of being wrongly accused rather than guilt. But when pressed on why he never came forward, never tried to help in the search for Beauty when she was missing, Jacques had no answer. After 6 days of testimony, the case was handed over to the jury. The deliberation lasted only 4 hours, a sign of how overwhelmingly the evidence had pointed in one direction. As the courtroom fell silent, the foreperson stood, clearing his throat. "We, the jury, find the defendant, Eugene Lewis, Jacques, guilty of first-degree murder, arson, and aggravated assault. Gasps and muffled cries filled the room. Beauty's mother broke down in her seat, the weight of months of anguish collapsing upon her all at once. Beauty's father, his shoulders tense with restrained emotion, took in a deep breath, his fists unclenching for the first time in weeks. Jacques sat motionless, staring ahead, his expression unreadable. For the first time since his arrest, his cocky indifference cracked, and his lips pressed into a thin, resigned line. During the sentencing phase, Beauty's mother took the stand one final time. Her words were direct, heavy with pain, yet unwavering. My daughter. She was sunshine. She was joy. She had dreams. Dreams that were stolen because someone couldn't stand to see her happy without them. He didn't just kill her. He tried to erase her, but we won't let that happen. The judge, unmoved by the defense's plea for leniency, handed down the sentence. Life in prison without the possibility of parole. Jacques would spend the rest of his days behind bars, a fitting punishment for the irreversible loss he had inflicted. Though the verdict brought a sense of justice, nothing could truly mend the void left in the wake of Beauty's death. But in the months that followed, her family channeled their grief into action. They established the Katera Couch Foundation, an organization dedicated to helping young athletes, providing support for victims of domestic violence and ensuring that no other family would endure the heartbreak they had suffered. Her former roller skating community continued to honor her memory through annual skating tributes, where hundreds gathered to glide across rinks in celebration of the life she had lived. On social media, Beauty's old videos remained a beacon of light. Fans continued to share her work, her laughter and talent preserved in the digital world. A reminder that though she was gone, she was not forgotten. And in Austell, Georgia, where a town had once been paralyzed by grief, Beauty's story became something greater than tragedy. It became a call for awareness, strength, and change. The weeks following the trial brought an unusual stillness to Austell, Georgia. The courtroom had delivered its verdict, and the man responsible for Katera Couch's death was locked away. But justice did little to ease the hollow ache left in the hearts of those who loved her. The reality of her absence settled in like an unwelcome fog, lingering in every familiar place she once graced with her presence. Her family, though relieved that the legal battle had reached its rightful conclusion, still woke up each day with the gut-wrenching realization that Beauty wasn't coming back. Her mother, Kimberly, struggled the most. Her days were punctuated with quiet moments where she would reach for her phone, instinctively expecting a text from her daughter. Some nights, she replayed Beauty's old voice messages just to hear her laugh again. Beauty's father, once the quiet pillar of the family, found solace in action. He threw himself into community work, advocating for stricter laws surrounding domestic violence and social media harassment. In interviews, he spoke with raw emotion, urging people to recognize the warning signs of controlling relationships before they escalated to tragedy. The loss of Beauty wasn't just a family's private heartbreak. It was a wound in the community. Austell, a town where everyone had known Beauty in some way. Russ School, through the local skating rink, through the internet, now bore the weight of her absence. Her memorial site, located near the very rink where she had practiced since childhood, became a sacred place where fans and friends left handwritten letters, photographs, and even pairs of roller skates in tribute. As Beauty's case made national headlines, a deeper conversation began unfolding about the vulnerabilities of social media influencers, particularly young women in the public eye. For many, Beauty's story was an urgent wake-up call. She had spent years building a following, sharing her joy, her craft, and her life with an audience that adored her. But that visibility, her very success, had also made her a target. The rise of digital fame comes with unseen risks. Many influencers, especially women, are forced to navigate an unsettling reality where admiration and obsession blur into dangerous territory. The very platforms that elevate their voices also expose them to individuals who might misinterpret accessibility as entitlement, attention as ownership, or, in the most extreme cases, love as control. Experts weighed in on how social media culture can sometimes enable unhealthy relationships and embolden possessive behavior. Beauty's case underscored how toxic jealousy and control can manifest. How online visibility doesn't always translate to safety. Conversations also turned to the role of law enforcement and the justice system in preventing crimes like this from happening again. While the rapid arrest and conviction of Jacques demonstrated efficiency, some questioned whether there had been enough intervention before the crime occurred. Could Beauty's life have been saved if more resources had been dedicated to identifying domestic violence risks within relationships before they escalated? The justice system had functioned as it was meant to. Evidence had been collected, a trial had taken place, and a guilty man was put behind bars. Yet even with the harshest punishment handed down, there was no true victory. Beauty Couch had been denied her future. The young woman who once glided effortlessly across the floor, who had plans, dreams, and a life filled with potential, was gone. The trial was over, but the real fight had just begun. Her family had taken it upon themselves to turn tragedy into action, ensuring that Beauty's death would not be in vain. Through the Beauty Couch Foundation, they committed to educating young women on the warning signs of controlling, possessive relationships, advocating for policy changes that would protect social media personalities from harassment and stalking, providing support to victims of domestic abuse, particularly in situations where violence escalates from emotional control to physical harm. Meanwhile, the skating community carried on Beauty's legacy in the way she would have wanted, through movement, through joy, through unity. Roller skating events in her honor became an annual tradition, with thousands participating in memorial skates that celebrated her life rather than just mourning her loss. Her social media accounts remained active, now managed by her family, who used them to share her story, raise awareness, and keep her spirit alive. Posts filled with her old videos, her voice and her laughter continued to inspire her followers. The comment sections were flooded with messages from people around the world, some grieving, some remembering, and some promising to take the lessons of Beauty's story and protect themselves and others in similar situations. Austell, Georgia, would never be the same again. Beauty Couch had been a hometown hero, a symbol of passion and perseverance. Though her physical presence was gone, her impact would be everlasting. Her story wasn't just another tragedy. It became a cautionary tale, a reminder of the hidden dangers lurking behind seemingly perfect relationships, and a call to action for better protections for women in the digital age. In the end, the community, her family, and the world had lost Beauty, but in return, they had gained a mission: to make sure that no other young woman, no other daughter, no other friend suffered the same fate. The tragic loss of Beauty Couch was more than just another crime. It was a turning point that forced the world to confront the dangers lurking beneath the surface of digital fame, toxic relationships, and unspoken fears. It was a reminder that behind the dazzling performances and perfectly curated posts, influencers and public figures are real people, with real struggles, vulnerabilities, and, in some cases, silent battles they may be too afraid to voice. Through her infectious spirit and undeniable talent, Beauty had built a world of inspiration. She wasn't just a skater. She was an artist in motion, a young woman who could turn the simplicity of gliding across a rink into something mesmerizing. She was proof that passion, when combined with dedication, could transcend boundaries, bringing together people from all walks of life. Her legacy in the roller skating world remains unmatched. The young girl who once laced up her skates in small-town Georgia had managed to inspire thousands across the world, leaving behind a trail of encouragement for those who wished to follow in her footsteps. Today, her name continues to be spoken in skating circles. Instructors cite her as an example of what determination looks like. Young skaters try to recreate her moves, paying tribute to the skill that made her unforgettable. Events in her honor now serve as reminders that while she may be gone, the impact of her presence lingers on. But her story is also a cautionary tale, one that sheds light on the hidden threats that social media personalities face daily. Beauty wasn't just a roller skater. She was an influencer, a rising digital star whose life was lived in front of an audience. That visibility brought opportunities, but it also made her a target for possessiveness, obsession, and control. Her case forced a long overdue conversation about the safety of influencers, particularly women, in an era where fame is no longer confined to Hollywood, but can be built in the palm of your hand. The internet had given Beauty a platform to share her passion, uplift others, and turn her dreams into reality, but it had also placed her in a vulnerable position, one that, in the wrong circumstances, became dangerous. Her story urges content creators, young women, and anyone navigating online spaces to recognize the risks that can come with digital exposure. It has also fueled discussions about the responsibility that platforms should bear in helping protect the very people who bring them success. If Beauty's story teaches us anything, it is this. Recognizing the warning signs of possessive and controlling behavior is not just important, it can be life-saving. Beauty's friends saw the signs, but like many, they didn't realize just how dangerous things could become. If someone expresses fear, discomfort, or concern about a partner, those worries must be taken seriously. Social media gives visibility, but it also demands vigilance. For influencers, streamers, and creators, having a large audience means more than just followers and engagement. It means exposure. There must be better safety measures in place to protect individuals who make a living online. No one should have to navigate danger alone. Whether it's a family member, a friend, or a community, there must be a strong support system available for those who feel trapped in toxic or unsafe situations. No one should suffer in silence. Beauty Couch's name will forever be etched in the hearts of those who loved her, the ones who skated beside her, and the fans who watched in admiration from afar. But her story shouldn't just be remembered. It should serve as a catalyst for change. Her family's mission to spread awareness, educate young women, and advocate for protections for influencers and victims of domestic violence is only just beginning. They have vowed that her death will not be in vain. Communities continue to honor her memory through skating events, awareness campaigns, and conversations about what must change to protect women in relationships and influencers in the digital world. Beauty was more than a victim. She was a force of joy, a symbol of strength, and a soul too bright to ever be forgotten. Her story is a warning, but more than that, it is a call to action. A call to recognize the dangers before it's too late. A call to never let another life be stolen in silence. A call to ensure that beauty's light continues to shine, not just in memory, but in the lessons she left behind. Beauty Couch's story is one that demands to be heard, remembered, and learned from. Her life was filled with joy, passion, and a relentless drive to inspire those around her. But her tragic end serves as a painful reminder of the hidden dangers that can exist behind the screens of social media and in relationships where control masquerades as love. Her legacy isn't just in the videos she left behind, the thousands of skaters she inspired, or the countless hearts she touched. It's in the conversations we must continue to have, the changes that need to be made, and the awareness that must be spread to ensure that no other promising young life is taken in the way hers was. If Beauty's story resonated with you, if you believe in justice, awareness, and protecting those at risk, then help us keep this conversation alive. Subscribe to Fatal Fame and turn on notifications so you never miss an important story like this one. Every share, every comment, and every voice that joins this discussion brings us one step closer to preventing tragedies like this from happening again. Together, we can make sure Beauty Couch is never forgotten.